This video has been annotated for extra information density.
A little while ago, someone asked in a comment on one of my Ubiquity role-playing system videos if it wouldn't be possible to do one on using experience in the game. And I thought that was a really good idea that fits in well with the series, but it's taken me a little time to get to it, so apologies for the delay. I guess we could look at experience from 2 points of view, from the game master's point of view and from the player's point of view. And that goes along well with how experience is presented in each of the games, from Hollow Earth all the way through, Desolation, All for One, Leagues of Adventure, and Space 1889. You will find in the book 2 references to experience points. The first one, wherever it comes in the book, like I'm holding Leagues of Adventure here, and it's on page 72. The first one is for starting experience points. This is at the end of character generation, and these starting experience points are used to round out your character, to finish them off. It's described as representing the experience the character has gained up to the point where play starts, which means this is a variable number. It's printed, or its default rating is 15 experience points. It could be less, it could be more, depending on the needs of the particular game or campaign that you're playing. You might be playing very experienced older characters, and so be allotted more. You might be joining, a new character might be joining an established group and be given a certain amount of starting experience points to be on, some kind of comparable level to the rest of the group. Or you might be starting, playing very young characters and receive fewer experience points. So starting experience points, like I said, is a part of character creation. And the choices that you're faced with are, do I want to increase a primary attribute? Do I want more of the focus of the character to be on their raw physical or raw social characteristics? Do I want to increase their fitness, their body score? Do I want to increase their dexterity? Do I want to increase their strength, their charisma, their intelligence, or their willpower? These will have ancillary effects in that they affect secondary attributes. So, do I or don't I want to put the character's experience into developing who they are from the core of their person? Or would I like to spend these points on skills? It's kind of obvious what benefit that has. Do I want to give them a broad smattering of skills at a very novice level? Or do I want to focus on or specialize on very specific areas to represent some kind of sort of training package or very specific career? Do I want to focus on skill specialization? Yes, they have learned this particular skill, but really when they think of that skill, they're focused on this particular area of it. Do I want to add an additional talent? Or do I want to add an additional resource? And these are big decisions. Raising a primary attribute is leveled. So if you've ended up with a 1 strength and you decided, I really need to have a 2 strength. I don't want to be a weakling. I'd like to be a typical person. Then you're paying whatever level you have times 5 in experience points. So if you have a 1, you'd like to go to a 2, that's 10 experience points. If you have a 2 and you want to go to 3, that's 15 experience points. And as we mentioned earlier, the default is 15 experience points. So getting a 3 in something out of the scale of 1 to 5 is going to be expensive. And that really is as high as you can take it at the default level. A new skill, on the other hand, is the new level times 2. Right. Skill specialization is a flat cost of 3 points. This adds 1 die to your die pool for that specialized thing. In a simple example, if you have a melee fighter who you would like to have specialize in knives, then they might have a melee of 4, let's say, and then using knives, they have a 5. Talent, 15 points. Resource, 15 points. You're not getting both, you're getting one. So this can really hang some people up, actually. And I can remember thinking, do I want to have a character that has 2 talents? Will that be a reasonable or effective use of points? Is that really the kind of character I want to play, who's all raw ability and has really very few connections to the world in which they're in? Or do I want to be so completely focused on my connections to the world that I haven't developed any of my natural or native abilities? It's a significant choice. It affects how the character idea, grows. Or at least it does for me. And that's it for starting experience points. Those are the decisions you have. Am I going to use some of these allotted starting experience points to put more focus on the character's raw attributes and the spin-off effect they have on the secondary attributes? Do I want to focus on their training in skills? Do I want to specialize in things to kind of downplay the broad category of the skill and emphasize a specific area of the skill? Do I want to focus on a talent, which, in a pulp heroic adventure game may be quite significant? Or do I want to focus on a resource, which on, well, any of the games, of course, but on a more socially oriented game, perhaps, may be significant? What do I want to do? I find all of that fun myself. Suggestions? I'm not sure I have any general suggestions. Talents have a big effect in the game. Resources have a big effect in the game. The character, who the character is, and how you want to play that character, well, they have an effect on what your decision should be. Are new attributes, higher level of attributes useful? Sure they are. I mean, they increase the base of all skill levels that they're associated with, and on and on and on. So, who is the character? To be that character, what do they need to be able to do? What makes those choices interesting? What rounds the character out into more dimensions than just what can they do? To be satisfied playing a character, I think, especially in something with such strong archetypes as games in this broad genre, I think it's necessary to be satisfied with what the character can do. But that, in my opinion, can't be all of it. Can't just be, I've made a gunslinger, or I've made a bitter veteran cannoneer. There has to be character behind that. Why are they bitter? Why were they a cannoneer? What are they doing now? What was it that made them a gunslinger in the first place? Who have they left behind? Who have they joined up with? So, that's starting experience points. And now that they have been dealt with, the next step from the player's point of view is earning more and using those to advance the character, to develop the character over time, spent in play in the campaign. In Ubiquity, something can only be improved by 1 point, let's say, whenever you get a chance to spend experience. So if you have a level of 4 in melee, then when you have an opportunity to spend experience points, if you have a reason to increase your melee score, it could go to 5 and no higher. Same goes for things like improving physical attribute, improving intelligence through education, and so on. 1 point per opportunity. And these things shouldn't mess with the flow of the story in this type of gaming. Often the rules will say something like the game master needs to approve experience point expenditures, or something like that, something along those lines. A lot of responsibility is thrust into the game master's hands, and if your game master in your group is fine with that, that's great. That's a very efficient way to do something, because the game master does have that kind of less myopic point of view about the campaign. They're not really looking through the eyes of the character or through the player's desires to have a more powerful character. They're looking more at the flow of the campaign. They're places that they want it to go, and they are the ones ultimately responsible for the flow of time in the campaign. So all of those things give them a certain advantage for doling out experience points. But the group can take care of it also. The group can come together and people can say, I'd like to expend experience points to raise my intelligence because my low intelligence has been hampering my character during play. And then the group says, well, I think you've been working really hard. You've been, talking with experts. You've been reading a lot of tomes and things. This makes good sense. Yeah, let's have that happen. Or conversely, they can say, you have done nothing that would suggest a higher intelligence is important to your character. In fact, here's all the really ridiculous things that they do, and here's what they actually spend their time on. So if you're going to justify their education level increasing, you're going to have to do something that suggests that this is important to them. That kind of thing. And that's within the group. So anything can be increased, but just by 1 point. So advancement becomes trickier in terms of talents and resources. Now, resources need to be improved through play, and then the character shows their commitment to those things by spending experience points on them. So for an increase in the resource of status, for example, you're really going to have to toe the line of whatever organization you have status in. You're going to have to earn a promotion, earn more responsibility. That happens in play. And then if you like the positive attention you're receiving from that organization in play, and you'd like to make that promotion a permanent aspect of your character, you spend the experience points on the resource. With a talent, there are more options available. Some talents you need to buy at character creation because they're what's called unique talent, and they're really a part of your character's almost genetic makeup. If this hasn't been a part of your character from the beginning, it's not going to appear later. Those talents are marked very clearly in the list of talents. Here's some examples, and they are what they are. So you're not going to be adding those in place, so you can remove those from the list. Some talents are what are called advanced talents, and they can be taken multiple times, increasing their effect on the character with each increase. Now, this is a certain kind of investment. In play, if you have an advanced talent of whatever level, you can spend a style point to up it a level for that scene. So if you have accuracy, for example, which gives you a bonus with your ranged attacks, you could spend a style point and move it to the next level for that scene, getting a better bonus to your ranged attacks. Or spend 2 style points and raise it to yet another level, and so on. Do you need to buy this with your experience? How important is being accurate at a very high level to the person that your character is? Is it the reflection of, in this scene, something from Firefly comes to mind. In this scene, Malcolm Reynolds has been firing and, doing fairly well for himself. But in this particular moment, right now, if he isn't accurate, right now, Jane dies, right? If he can't shoot the rope tying him to the Reaver spacecraft, Jane's toast. You see him center himself. Player spends style points. And Malcolm Reynolds makes the shot. In that moment, it was essential to have a very high level of accuracy. And style points got him there. But normally when you play the character, it's kind of fun if he misses sometimes. That kind of decision needs to be made. Do I want to buy the higher level of an advanced talent or not? If you were playing a character more like the Spider from, the Pulp Fiction novels, then you definitely want that accuracy talent to be very, very high, because pretty much with every shot he hits and kills. Okay, advanced talents. There are other talents that are kind of one and done. You buy them and they become a part of who your character is. Adding those, well, in what order would you like to add them? How would you like to see your character develop? And that's really how they need to be approached. So, from the player side, on what will I spend my experience points? Is this a time where I can realistically, believably, and in a way that's supported by what has happened so far in the campaign, improve an attribute? Is this a period where it makes sense that some of the skills that I've been using all the time show real improvement? Is this a period where I have been put through the ringer so often that a new talent or greater facility with an existing talent appears? Have I been putting the time into the campaign, into the events of the campaign, to warrant or justify the increase of a resource? The higher something goes, the more expensive it becomes. Talents and resources are always the most expensive things to purchase. Are these things to save up for, or and say 3-4 experience points breaks from now, that's when I'll focus on a talent. But as we go, I'm going to incrementally increase skills, and maybe from time to time increase an attribute. Something like that. And that's spending experience points from the player point of view. The second mention, of course, is awarding experience points for actual play. So as I mentioned, I was sitting here with Leagues of Adventure, so we'll just continue on with it. The page references for the other books are here. Experience points start on page 105, and there's a description of what their function is to show how the character is maturing after play. And there's a small section on game master advice about how many points should be awarded. And I think that this is something you do have to take seriously. There is a very clear guide on giving experience points, and we'll start there. We have the automatic point, the danger point, the role-playing point, the success point, and the wisdom point. And if anybody has experience playing the classic World of Darkness, this structure will seem very familiar. It's an easy one to remember, and it's something that I have carried forward from Storyteller into other games that I've played in the way I think about using their system. How many points, if I'm the arbiter of how many points get awarded, I want to have a certain number that are related to the simple experience of the thing, whether that was a good experience for the character, where they were successful, or they accomplished some amazing things, or whether this was an experience of failure. From both of these sources, we grow. So things like the automatic point, I find to be very helpful, however that's expressed in whatever system you're using. So in Ubiquity, characters gain an experience point for being part of a game session. Now, being part, I take pretty seriously. Did the player really participate? I'm not talking about role-playing. I'm not talking about trying to act or perform. I mean, did they participate? Were they involved in problem solving, or were they just going along? And if they're just going along, I'm not really tempted to provide the automatic point. You could definitely give everyone 1 point for just showing up. I wouldn't want to phrase it that way. Would you? Do you want to give someone a point just for showing up, or do you want to give them a point for participating, for being a part of the session? Danger. Were the characters challenged by danger? Successful or unsuccessful? Give them a point. They've learned from that experience. Role-playing. Characters gain 1 experience point whenever the players portray them exceptionally well. A lot of game masters, of my experience, have trouble with this. Right? And it's not their ability to decide whether or not someone was portraying their character in an entertaining or good way according to the standards of the group. That part's easy. It's actually telling someone, out of all the people that were here, I feel that you did the best job. It feels like playing favorites. How I learned to mitigate this way back with Vampire was, at the end of a session, you actually talk about it. And who does everybody think role played well? Yes, you, the game master, are assigning that point. You're responsible for making sure that experience points are given out at the end of a session, but it doesn't have to be you saying, "And lo, I decree you are the best role player today." It doesn't have to go that way. Engage the group. Often, this is a fun and engaging conversation, and usually people agree on the particular scene or set of scenes or portrayal that they enjoyed most that night. Success. Characters gain a point for succeeding. This goes hand in hand with the danger point. And then wisdom. Characters gain an experience point whenever they learn something critically important. So this also works with the danger point. I see these things as a trilogy. How were the characters tested, let's say, physically or existentially? Did they almost die? Did they accomplish their goals? Does this, move them forward in a way that benefits them? And have they learned something from the experience? So, maybe they were challenged by danger, so they get the danger point. But maybe they failed, and they wind up with the wisdom point. Maybe somehow they get all three. Maybe there was no danger. It's not saying that after every session you're going to get 5 points. These are things to consider. The automatic point is pretty much the only one that should ever be considered a given. And, certainly after a group is established, I'm not even really sure that it should be all that automatic unless the players are engaged with playing. The Game Master may also decide to award extra points. So this brings us back to how we started this conversation with awarding experience points. The Game Master does need to be cautious. If you're playing a limited run, you might not have to be that cautious. You might want the players to be able to experience advancing the characters, being able to develop or expand existing talents, to expand their resources, to build up skills, this sort of thing. They might want to see that kind of progress. In which case, you might not want to be strict or frugal with the experience points. If you're only playing 2 or 3 sessions, you might give them experience points so they can see that. If you're playing a one-shot, none of this is worth considering unless that one-shot is going to grow into something else. Campaign play. This is where it matters. How much does one story represent in terms of contribution to development? How long do you intend to play? You're thinking, well, we're going to play for about 6 months. We're going to play every week for 6 months. Just quickly do the math. If you're giving out 3 experience points per session, and let's say there's 4 sessions before there's a break to spend experience points, then that's 12 experience points. It's not enough to buy a talent, meaning every 2 months they could buy a talent or a resource. Is that a good rate of progression? The hoarding players will probably do something like that. Every second story or every second month of play, they'll upgrade a talent or buy a new talent or something like that. Others will be increasing their skills, and they'll be able to increase their skills, quite a few skills, for that same amount of points. Their effectiveness in all areas will go up. Their effectiveness in that area covered by the talent may not. To have a strong, kind of heroic character, a balance between increasing the skills and increasing talents and resources is necessary. So, do you need to give out more points? Do you want to give out 5 per session? Right? and then end up with 20 points, meaning after every break, a new talent, a new resource, and some new skills will come along. Is that the kind of speed or pace of development you want? So for me, when I start a campaign, my default thinking is that they're ongoing, they're open ended. I really don't sit down to say, let's play a campaign for 2 months. I mean, I almost never do that. So I think about the pace of development as not needing to be fast. And so I award experience points based solely on what happens in play. Sometimes this means that a lot of experience points are given because the session or set of sessions was amazing. Sometimes it's more like a maintenance level. Yes, your characters were involved. Yes, they were doing things. Wasn't a great success. They didn't particularly learn anything new. They faced a lot of danger. That kind of thing. So once we get into the groove of the campaign, then development becomes very steady and very predictable. And characters can start, or players can start to do things with their characters that will earn them very specific experience points, like they will go to the Far East for training in martial art, or they will, try to uncover some lost lore among the booksellers and artifact sellers in the sands of Egypt, something like that, in order to make their development a part of campaign play. And I find that very cool, and it's very easy to reward experience points for that. As was mentioned earlier, it's the Game Master's prerogative to assign extra experience points for a particular session or at the end of a particular story for reasons that suit the events that took place. It comes with a warning, don't give too many, but this certainly can be done. This opens up the question of if something was particularly challenging, some characters are dying, people are being crippled and rendered unconscious, and it's a major villain or a major milestone in the campaign. How do I assign experience points to that encounter? And my counter to that question would be you're not really assigning experience points to an encounter or to a particular danger or threat. You are assigning experience points based on the session as a whole. So, did they learn anything? Did their wisdom, did their perspective on life change? Give them a wisdom point. Did they face danger? Yeah. Did they face a lot of danger? Did they face such a high level of danger that you can't believe they survived? Then maybe you would give them an extra point. Did they learn something so life-altering that the campaign will no longer be the same? Give them a point. Here's some examples. The wisdom point, for example. Did the character learn? Were they fundamentally changed? Yeah. Indiana Jones travels to India and covers the Sankara stones and wrestles with the Thuggee cult and all of these things. And he comes away having learned something. Not enough to really change him to the point where when the Ark of the Covenant rolls around, he has an unshakable faith in God. He has to go through an awful lot before he's willing to recognize that he's in the presence of the divine. But he learned something in India. It changed him perhaps from the grave robber into the archaeologist. He'd stumbled a bit from the light, as Bella said. Bespin. Luke Skywalker is confronting Darth Vader, and Vader reveals to him that everything he believed about his life, the very foundation on which he built his dreams, I'm going to be a starfighter pilot like my dad someday, it's all taken away. Luke can't really process this information. Throws himself into the arms of the abyss, takes a leap of faith. Comes out the other side fundamentally altered. He now must go into seclusion, dedicate himself to mastering what he has been taught in order to redeem his father. Maybe this represents a wisdom reward beyond just the 1 point. Food for thought. So, this has been, once again, a long video talking about what could be a simple subject, but as always, has layers to it. Assigning experience points in Ubiquity from the GM's point of view, it should be, I feel, reaffirming the joy of the experience. You noticed what people around the table were doing. This goes for the other players as well. Get them involved in the success point, the wisdom point, the role-playing point. Don't just limit it to the GM has determined that these are the experience points. It doesn't have to be that way. And when the group is actually in the groove of paying attention to what everybody has done and how that relates to their actual character, and how worthy or unworthy that is of gaining experience point rewards, I find that's the basis of a good group. So the experience experience points are almost the glue that binds the group together. Starting experience points, keep your initial character concept in mind, and use those experience points to not only represent what you need the character to do, but push you in a direction of who the character is. I hope this has been helpful. Thanks for the suggestion of doing this video. Again, sorry it took so long. Take care.